Honourable Senators, I rise today to speak in opposition to this motion to extend the Senate's hybrid parliamentary sittings to April 30th, 2022. As you may know, I have opposed similar proposals for conducting virtual and hybrid parliamentary business in the past. Frankly, I don't think that a virtual connection between senators is sufficient for adequately handling the magnitude of issues Parliament deals with every day. Refugees fleeing war-torn Ukraine or Afghanistan, assisted suicide, the Emergencies Act. As parliamentarians, we are called to come together in this place at the heart of Canada's very democracy to debate the issues that matter most to Canadians. For us to be here in person matters. Our senatorial duties aren't something we should fit in around the edges of our own lives, something we log on to or off of. Our primary responsibility should be to represent the interests of our respective regions in the legislative process. To do that, I think it's important to stand up and make our voices heard. This motion is indicative of a Senate parliamentary bubble that doesn't reflect real life in Canada. And let me preface my comments on this by saying that I am proudly triple vaccinated, and I have promoted this widely on my social media. But at this point in time, every province has either dropped their vaccine mandates or has a plan to do so. Still, this federal Trudeau government obstinately refuses to drop the federal vaccine mandates or even plan for it. With this motion, the government signals that it intends to keep this chamber under the boot of hybrid parliament just a little while longer. As we've seen, a dull parliament conducted by Zoom is much less likely to spark public and media interest, which is advantageous to a government keen to avoid transparency and accountability. This motion is weak on any commitment to returning to in-person Senate sittings. It reads, quote, that the Senate commit to the consideration of a transition back to in-person sittings as soon as practicable in light of relevant factors, quote. The Senate should, quote, commit to the consideration of a transition? I could commit to the consideration of a transition into a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan, but it doesn't mean I will. Such a wide-open phrase commits the government to absolutely nothing. The reality is that most people don't have the luxury of dialing in remotely to work, and for months, Canada has been asking Canadians to work while still being as safe as they can. Cleaners, healthcare workers, mechanics, farmers, waitstaff, first responders, truckers. These are just some of the people who have worked in person throughout this pandemic to support the public. And honourable senators, as public servants, quite literally servants of the people, senators should be on that list too. But that hasn't been the case, has it? On top of the unnecessary election Prime Minister Trudeau called, we've been in virtual sittings for the past 18 months. We've had hamstrung committees that can only do half as much work as normal because of Zoom broadcast scheduling problems. Frequent suspensions in the chamber due to technological problems on one end or the other. All of these interruptions and obstacles ultimately chip away at our democracy. Because of challenging personal circumstances during the pandemic, many senators have not been coming in person to Ottawa at all. I haven't seen some of my Senate colleagues for 2 years. This loss of informal, in-person communications between senators at committee or in the halls not only hampers political strategy, but also the collegiality, communication, and cooperation between senators. Previously, I have actually convinced other senators to vote with me on initiatives just as the whips are heading down the aisle before a vote, something that is just not as possible under a hybrid system. Other COVID safety measures could have been employed in the Senate chamber, which would have allowed us the freedom to safely social distance while still gathering in person for chamber sessions. These included measures like plexiglass dividers, or speaking from a more distanced corner of the chamber or gallery, for example. At times, when the Speaker himself has had to attend the chamber by Zoom, the disadvantages of a hybrid system are quickly apparent. He is unable to see the full chamber in detail, and thus can't see if a senator is rising in the chamber or if someone is trying to get his attention. One of the biggest drawbacks to a hybrid Senate system is the impact that it has on our parliamentary interpreters. This is an ongoing major problem, and it's one I've voiced at Internal Economy Committee and in the chamber. Hybrid parliament has had very detrimental health implications for these employees, especially given the varying quality of audio equipment used by senators and witnesses in the chamber or at committees. Furthermore, the limited number of qualified interpreters in the National Capital Region, plus a higher demand for their services, means an increased level of work overload and burnout. It is unfair that we expect interpreters to shoulder this increased burden at a risk to their own personal health so that senators can attend by Zoom from the comfort of their own homes. Furthermore, as a detailed House of Commons report found last year, hybrid sittings require double the amount of employees in general to run compared to an in-person sitting of the House. The argument that hybrid parliament is better for staff just simply doesn't hold water. And Ottawa's vaccination rate is one of the very highest in the country. The Senate already has a vaccine mandate as a precondition for employment or even attending at the parliamentary precinct. Yet rather than those measures providing an additional measure of freedom within the Senate in the last several months, our restrictions have tightened. Now we not only have to wear a mask in the chamber, even at our seat, and sit 6 feet apart, but until recently, we were expected to wear a mask while speaking in the chamber. This is different than the House of Commons, where they have always been able to remove their mask to speak. Of course, the Senate has continued to adhere to this masking policy, even though the province of Ontario recently removed its provincial mask mandate. Meanwhile, Ottawa's downtown is a ghost town. The streets in front of Parliament Hill are still locked down to vehicular traffic, weeks after the convoy left. No one seems to be able to explain why. It's just one more of those infuriating details of life in a bureaucratic city. It seems every week another long-time small business is closing, no longer able to withstand the absence of its usual clientele. What is the plan for reopening in this chamber, this precinct, and in the streets surrounding us in the National Capital Region? We can't live this way forever. It's not good for Parliament, and it is certainly not good for the Canadian economy. Recently, the Senate circulated a notice announcing the easing of restrictions throughout Senate and parliamentary buildings. That memo noted that only 25% of the Senate administration workforce would be returning to the office by mid-April. There were no other indications about ramping up back-to-work plans beyond that. Meanwhile, the Senate budget for the upcoming fiscal year has ballooned to $122 million, a sum which has continued to increase, despite the fact that we have had 2 years of a pandemic, a significant portion of senators are not traveling back and forth to Ottawa, and we currently have 15 senatorial vacancies. Other businesses and organizations have had to make difficult and often gut-wrenching decisions about layoffs and cutbacks because of this pandemic. Yet Senate administration has added employees, and they and we have not lost one paycheck throughout this pandemic. It seems like everyone else in the country has a back-to-work plan. Why not the Senate? The motion says the Speaker will only extend the hybrid Senate further after consultation with the other leaders and facilitators in the Senate. My question on that is that the Trudeau government's patented brand of consultation, a phone call just before the emailed press release goes out? One of the primary reasons I am opposed to extending the hybrid Senate is the Trudeau government's penchant for using it to try to avoid accountability. This government has pumped billions of dollars in spending through this Parliament during this pandemic, ramming it through the Senate in brief committees of the whole, rather than holding the usual intensive Senate committee studies. With a committee of the whole, a Trudeau minister or two appear for 1 or 2 hours with no other witnesses to give rambling responses that don't directly answer even the most basic of questions. It's unequivocally bad Parliament, and it impairs the ability for opposition, in fact all parliamentarians, to hold the government accountable. How many times throughout this hybrid Parliament have we seen the leader of the government in the Senate refuse to even deliver a speech on government bills and motions that they want passed lickety-split through this chamber? He's even waived his right to speak on this motion, which also denies the rest of us the opportunity to question the government on this important issue. There is no excuse, honourable senators, none. The Senate government leader has a budget of $1.5 million and a staff of up to as many as 15 people, plus the massive resources of the Government of Canada to draw upon to do his work. As the leader of the government in the Senate, he owes the people of Canada at least the respect of doing that job. We saw it again this Tuesday with the government's deputy leader in the Senate, who introduced 2 major government supply bills worth tens of billions of dollars each, but then did not speak to either one at second reading. When I asked her how much money each bill would cost, she had to pause and look it up, saying she wasn't expecting any questions. Why not? This is about government accountability. This Trudeau government treats Parliament like background noise to be muted and managed. And in that worldview, dialing it in by Zoom is good enough governance. But Canadians deserve better, honourable senators, and the Senate of Canada is not just a rubber stamp. We must not allow this chamber to be treated like one. Hybrid parliament is terrible for accountability and has also had an awful impact on Senate committees. First, because of the lack of parliamentary and broadcasting resources, Senate committees can generally hold only about half as many meetings as they would normally. For example, I looked up the committees I have been affiliated with in the past. Since April 1st, 2021, the Legal Committee met only 14 times, Rules Committee only 7 times, and Internal Economy, the committee that governs budgetary affairs for the entire Senate, sat only 9 times in the whole year. During regular in-person sitting, CEBA would generally meet 9 times in only about 3 months. Senate committees have traditionally been known as the vehicle to showcase some of the Senate's finest work: careful, measured, in-depth research and study on issues affecting Canadians. Instead, during this pandemic, committees have often been restricted to meeting once a week, and the number of witnesses that can appear at meetings have also been limited as well. Senate committees therefore bear the negative consequences of these limitations. Throughout the pandemic, the Senate has been treated like the junior partner of the House of Commons regarding broadcasting time and equipment. The House of Commons was continually priorized over the Senate, yet this was something that the Senate apparently agreed to throughout. Since almost the very beginning of the pandemic, the House of Commons has always had hybrid committee meetings. Almost right from the start, the House had committee meetings operating nearly at 100% normal capacity for almost the full pandemic. Meanwhile, at points, the Senate was forced to have only virtual committee meetings because of a lack of resource capacity. The Senate has had to continue to make do with the leftover scraps. The Senate and the House of Commons are equal but complementary chambers of Parliament. We should not be continually forced to sacrifice our parliamentary work for the benefit of the House of Commons. The Senate should be returning to in-person committee meetings as soon as possible, not extending this hybrid deadline once again. Honourable Senators, I think we need to think critically about the effect hybrid Parliament has not only had on our committees, but on Parliament, this Senate chamber, and on us as parliamentarians. Does hybrid Parliament serve the best interests of the Canadian public in Parliament? Is this government becoming more open, transparent, and accountable under a hybrid system? Or has it become a convenient system for shoving spending through Parliament quickly without too much pesky opposition interference? I fear the Trudeau government views it as the latter, and I, for one, do not want to stand by and watch that happen. I certainly won't accede to it, and that's why I plan to vote against this motion to extend hybrid Parliament. We need to return to work in person at full capacity, honourable senators. We should be standing here in our places for the people of Canada. Thank you.